candidate will be the first to close. The Republican will finish with the close. So we'll reverse the order from the start. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. Again, I ask that you give the candidates your attention. If you want to talk politics or do anything, go out in the hallway, go out front. But let's pay attention in here. Let's go ahead and begin. Rich Nugent will begin with his 2-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you so very much for the Chronicle for doing this every election season. It's always a great opportunity to be in Citrus County. And I said this the last time I was here. I'm sorry, I said this the last time that I was here, is that you have the best turnout of any of the forums that I have been to throughout this district. So, you deserve a round of applause for that. I've been married 37 years. My wife, Wendy, is way over there. And I have 3 sons that are currently serving in the United States Army. And I retired as sheriff in Hernando County. I was elected to serve you 2 years ago. And it has been quite an honor to go up to Washington, D.C. and do just that. Washington, D.C. is a strange, strange place, I will tell you. The water and the air is different. But here's what I'm all about, is the fact that we need to protect those that are on Social Security, those that are on Medicare, that we need to protect our veterans, those that are currently serving, and those that have served. And lastly, we need to create jobs. We need to set a tone in America that allows our small businesses to actually create jobs, for government to get out of the way. Because honestly, I have more faith in you than I do in bureaucrats up in Washington, D.C. And I can tell you that because I've been there now for 2 years. And one of the first things I did was put a piece of legislation out there to change the way Congress operates. And it's called Congress is Not a Career. And the whole idea was to take benefits away from members of Congress who are currently serving, to make them really do what was intended when the Constitution was written, that you go up there and serve, not make it a career. We have politicians up in Washington, D.C. that have been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's part of the reason it's broken in Washington, D.C. It's about, they forget about that we're here to serve you. You're not here to serve the government. Government is to serve you. And that has been forgotten in Washington, D.C. And so I will tell you that in my first 2 years, we've done a number of things to try to empower businesses. We've put 33 bills that have been passed, some with huge bipartisan support. I'm talking 413 votes out of 435. And those job-creating bills went to the Senate, and absolutely nothing has occurred. They haven't been discussed. They haven't been brought up on the floor. They haven't been voted on, either up or down, or amended and sent it back to the House. They've absolutely done nothing on those issues. And that's about what leadership's all about. It's about sitting down and trying to come to a conclusion as to how we can best serve you, not us. They got it all backwards. They really believe it's all about them. I look at it differently. I've had a career. I was a sheriff down in Hernando County for 10 years. So I've had a great career. And so this is all about coming back and serving you, the people of Citrus County. And the people, this is going to be District 11 now, not District 5. Changes. Thank you.
Testing. I'm going to do something tonight that I don't think many other politicians do, and that's lie to you. And the lie I'm going to tell you is that I was once a mortician, so when you hear it, you'll have the heads up. When the Republican National Convention happened not too long ago, I ended up bumping heads with a man, telling me about how his candidate could do better with clean water. He could do better with cleaner air, how he could make our schools better, how he wouldn't stop Social Security and Medicare from disappearing, and how he could be better if he was a leader. And when he got to the point of hammering in, if you hadn't run your own job, that you should be a leader, that's when I said to the man, you know, I once was a mortician. And that stopped him in his tracks. And he said, well, how did that work out? And I said, well, on the first day of that job, a lady brought her husband in who had died, and he was in a gray suit, and he wanted a black one. She asked me if I'd go across the street to the tailor and get him a black suit, send her the bill. It didn't matter what the charge was, and I agreed. And a few days later, she called me up and said, why didn't you send me the bill? And I said the bill was taken care of. It just so happened later in the day, another woman brought her husband in, and he was in a black suit, and I changed heads. And sometimes it's not changing heads that needs to be done to make a political point. It's just to change the suit jacket. And the suit jacket I'm wishing to replace is my opponent. What sets me off different from my opponent and other candidates is I'm willing to stick my head out a little further and do some things and say some things that other candidates aren't. And one of the things I'm outraged recently with what's been happening to Americans over abroad, soldiers hanging from bridges while radical extremists dance, while they kill our ambassadors, stomping them to death. And I'm calling for a holy war, if they want one. Not one with guns and bullets, but ones with sanctions and prayers. I'm asking Americans to pray that all radical extremists will have dreams, and the dreams will be of Jesus, and they'll become enlightened, because they live in countries where they have dogs, that have more rights, freedoms, and liberties than women, and that's not right. That's my opening statement.
Very good. Thank you, candidates. We're going to go ahead and begin with our questions, and Colonel Kurt Ebbets will start.
Congressman Nugent, I'll begin with you. Now that you've been on the Hill for 2 years, what should be done to reduce the deficit and national debt?
Well, we've been struggling with that issue for 2 years, and you're right. Part of it is to get Americans back to work. If you look at where we are in regards to, collection of taxes, it's about people aren't working. They can't pay, if they're not working. That's part of it. The other part is, as relates to the deficit, we're over $16 trillion. $16 trillion. We have done absolutely, in the prior two Congresses before this, they did absolutely nothing except spend more money. I will tell you, in the 2 years that I've been up there, we've cut cost, we've cut spending across the board. It's not enough. It's not enough. What we need to do is we absolutely have to reform Social Security and Medicare to make sure that it's there for our seniors today and those that are 55 today so that they have something for them when they retire. The same thing goes to the fact of for those that are under 55. We have to have something there for them in the future. Americans have always taken care of their seniors, and we need to be the ones that continue that legacy. And as it relates to the debt and the deficit, that's part and parcel of it. Because those that have, one last thing. Those that have been up in Washington, D.C. have failed miserably to address the real problems that face America because they all want to get reelected. Thank you.
Mr. Werder, as Congressman Nugent said, those up in Washington have failed. How would you, as an outsider, how would you reduce the deficit and national debt?
How would I reduce it?
Yeah. What legislation would you propose or support in reducing the deficit and national debt?
Maybe something like they do in Florida, where if you're going to propose a law, the actual cost of what that law is going to cost and where it's going to be funded from, tacked onto it might be a way. If state of Florida has a way where they tack on to every bill getting put on what it's going to cost and where the funding is going to come from. Possibly if they did that on the bills in Washington.
All right. Okay, next question. Following up on that, speaking of the deficit, address this question first, the congressman and then to the challenger. Mitt Romney has suggested eliminating some of the deductions in our tax bills to help reduce our budget deficit. Do you support eliminating some reductions that are now available? And if so, some deductions that are now available? And if so, what deductions would you propose eliminating?
What Mitt Romney has put forward is an idea in regards to how we actually do, A, flatten the tax code, make it simpler, and about not reducing taxes on millionaires and billionaires, but actually in regards to how do we reduce taxes on the middle class. At the end of the day, you can do that as you look at all the exemptions that are currently out there. And it's going to come back to the Congress. And the reason Mitt Romney hasn't said this one, this one, this one, is it really is a prerogative of Congress. It's really the prerogative of Congress to make the decision in regards to what is going to be cut and what taxes are going to be increased. It can't be done by fiat by the president. It actually has to be that you sit down with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle and come up with solutions as to how you're going to do that. And to this point, that has not been done.
Let's move Mr. Werder to the same
Werder.
question, and let's hold those mics real close.
Put them close to your mouth.
If you hold them close.
Can you give me the question again, sir?
Yes, sir. The question dealt with the elimination of deductions that are currently in the tax code. What of those deductions do you support, first of all, eliminating some deductions? And if so, what deductions would you propose eliminating?
I don't have an answer for this, sir. For anything, I can't hear the question.
You cannot hear me?
I don't understand the question, sir.
Let me make it as simple as I can, sir.
Yes, sir.
When you fill out your taxes, you're allowed to take certain deductions against your income. One way to raise revenue would be to eliminate some of those deductions. Do you support this? And if so, what would you eliminate?
I don't propose eliminate any reduction. If you're getting deductions on that, I support people still getting those deductions. I would support more deductions. For instance, if you were allowed to participate maybe in solar energy or panels, getting deductions on your personal income tax.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next question.
Congressman Nugent, you mentioned in your last response that Social Security needs to be reformed. What reforms do you believe are necessary to make Social Security solvent, and would you support the retirement age being raised?
I think one of the plans out there, actually a bipartisan plan, is to start raising that incrementally every year by a month. And the way the plan works out is in about 20 years, in about 15 years, the retirement age will increase. Now think about this. When retirement was first put in place at age 65, adult males were dying at age 63. So it was a pretty good deal for the federal government, and that's what allowed it to be funded in the way it is. So unless we do something, if we do nothing, Social Security, those that are currently on Social Security will see a 25% reduction in what they're bringing in. The other thing, and I just had this conversation with Paul Ryan today, is the fact that we have people on Social Security that are living below the poverty level, and that's just not acceptable. The other thing is those that make more don't need Social Security at the same level and the same increases that those that made less. And what we can't do is allow people to be under the poverty level that have worked all their lives, that have done everything that they're supposed to do right, paid in their payroll tax, and they're expecting it to be there. We want to make sure it is there. If we do nothing, and that's really what's been happening in Washington, D.C. over the years, is that they keep kicking the can down the road. And politicians up in Washington, D.C., one of the things I've learned is that if we do nothing, guess what? Maybe it'll get better. But that's like when I was in grade school hoping I'd get an A, but when I didn't study and didn't get an A, guess what? Didn't get better. You actually have to address the problem and go to it and charge into it head on and not just keep ignoring it like they have. Thank you.
Mr. Werder, the same question. Let's Social Security.
When my grandmother was born in 1898, there were cows still in Manhattan. And when she died, man had landed on the moon. She lived one of the probably most changed life anybody in humanity will ever see. And one of the things was Social Security. When she met her husband in the 20s, she lied to him and told him that she was 5 years younger than she was because there was a stigma at the time if you were older than a man. So when it came time for her to collect her Social Security, she had to wait 5 more years to collect it. When my grandfather died, he still didn't know that my grandmother was 5 years older than her. And my answer to Social Security, should they raise the age at all? No, it should be the same.
All right, gentlemen, we'd like to shift gears to the local level. On the local front, as you know, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has imposed manatee protection rules in Kings Bay. Question about that, and I'll ask this first to the congressman, then the challenger. Are these rules too strict, too lenient, or just about right?
Well, you know, I weighed into it when the rule first came out. And my concern was that there was not enough input from those that it affected the most, those that live in this county. It shouldn't be a bureaucratic decision in Washington, D.C. The idea is they're supposed to hold hearings and actually take input from the residents that it affects, not just do it because they think it's the right thing to do. When it affects you and I, we should have a right in the say in regards to what regulations are going to be put in place that control our lives. We have that God-given right to be able to ask a question and then ask our government to listen to what we have to say, and then for them to actually take our testimony into account when they make their decision of final rulemaking. And that's why we got upset, was the fact that they hadn't done, in our estimation, everything they should have done to get the public input from you, the folks that live here. They didn't get it from the elected officials that represent you, nor from you, in my estimation. So that's why we wrote the letter and required them to do more.
Mr. Werder, opinion on the manatee regulations?
Are they having a problem up here with people riding them? Not being from here, I believe they already have regulations concerning these animals. I don't particularly know the particulars of the problem you're having here with the bay, whether it's speed or pollution or building commerce on it. People that are local, are there people in this audience that actually live on Kings Bay? What seems to be the problem there with the manatees?
This is probably not the place to learn about it, but let's go ahead and move to our next question here. Mr. Ebbets.
Mr. Werder, during your interview with the editorial board at the Chronicle, you said that one of the key issues that concerned you was the price of gasoline and our energy policy. Would you permit oil drilling off of the coast of Florida?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would also permit oil drilling on the coast of Florida. We may be sitting right on top of the biggest oil supply in the world, and we don't know it yet. But the only difference maybe between myself and Mr. Nugent is that I want a dividend check given to every Floridian if they eventually do run into oil here.
Congressman Nugent, same question.
Well, my position has been real clear. I believe it's up to the state of Florida as to whether or not we want oil drilling off our coast. I believe in all the above policy. I believe in those states that want to have oil drilling off of Alaska that want to have it, off of Virginia that want to have it, that states like Texas that want to have it should have the ability to have that done. But I think it should come back to the state of Florida in regards to whether or not we want to have oil drilling off of our coast. I'm not opposed to oil drilling. What I am opposed to is over-government regulation as it relates to all the above aspect of it. You know, you hear it all the time. It's about oil, it's about natural gas, it's about coal technology, clean coal technology, and also about all the other renewables, whether it's wind, air, or sunlight. It's those types of issues that we have to do across the board. I believe that North America can be energy independent in 10 years. I believe that. But we have to actually be able to drill on federal lands. All the oil consumption that's increased on the oil production has been on privately owned land. It's down about 20% on federally owned land. We need to increase that. We have reserves that we should absolutely be tapping into.
Very good. We now have time. We have time for one more question, Mr. Harris.
One more
question.
One more question.
No, one more question.
Well, one question. Yes, there's been discussion during the presidential election about whether the current health care plan should be abolished. Should it be abolished? And if so, what should be the plan to replace it? I asked that to you and then to Mr. Werder.
First of all, I voted to abolish it because it's imposed 21 new taxes on Americans. It's put in place a panel that is going to actually, as it relates to Medicare, it's going to regulate the amount of money that can be spent on Medicare. And any regulation that they come up with does not have to come back to Congress to be passed. That's their mandate. There's 15 unelected bureaucrats. Half or less can be physicians. But when it comes down to, we should be able to have the same policy for those that are currently out there today that we have for members of Congress. We should make sure that those folks that have pre-existing conditions can be covered under affordable health care. No one should be going without health care. But I don't believe it's the federal government's role or responsibility to manage my health care. I believe I have a better opportunity to do what's best for me and for my family if I can do it. And so I want to empower back to folks to actually go out and use competition to drive down the cost of health care. It is extremely important because $716 billion was taken from Medicare to help pay for Obamacare.
Mr. Werder, same question.
I'm not against health care in any way, shape, or form for any American for any reason. The problem with affordable health care, which you're calling Obamacare, is I feel it is selling us out to insurance companies. And insurance companies are in it for profit. And it's not the profit right now, but what it's going to cost down the road, 10 years from now. What are the prices going to be on the procedures and the cost of prescription drugs and the insurance? And it's not just the health care insurance, it's the homeowner's insurance also.
Very good. Candidates, thank you. We're now going to go into 2-minute closing statements. We're going to begin with the Democrat. Mr. Werder, you get to begin.
Yes, sir, folks, sometimes I tend to use humor to get my point across. The other day I was at a Veterans Forum having a good laugh at my opponent's expense, and it was side-splitting, and a man rolled out of his seat into the aisle. It was hilarious until he started changing colors to blue and gray, and he was having a heart attack. It wasn't pleasant, and they had to come in and jumpstart the man and got him on a gurney and got him on oxygen and took him out. And after that, you don't go back to 2 congressmen walked into a bar type stories. And anyway, I felt really bad about it, and I went and tracked him down to apologize. And he said, Mr. Werder, you don't need to apologize for me having a heart attack. It was my 4th heart attack, and it was the best one I ever had, and you got my vote. And people say, well, we think you run for office as a joke. No, folks, I'm serious, and I'm serious as a heart attack.
Congressman Nugent, 2-minute close.
Thank you. Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve you in the United States House of Representatives. It's been an honor to be there representing you. And I don't take that lightly. That's one of the reasons we have one of the best constituent services, I believe, of any congressional office. That's why we do things like our situation where we come out and send emails to folks every week in regards to what we've done in Washington and what we're doing here back at home. Because I think it's important that you know what I'm doing. Not just when we try to make it so it's not a partisan issue. What we do try to do is tell you what is going on. And a lot of times you'll hear, and I hear this from folks that say, we see, how upset you are or how disenchanted you are with the process. And I will tell you there are days that that's very true. But I truly believe in this. I truly believe that America has not seen its best days. I believe it because I look at your eyes and I see great people that have worked for a lifetime, some that have created businesses, those that have done things that I could only dream of. But positively, I believe that America can excel again. And I worry about, one of the reasons I got into this was because of my 3 sons. I do worry about what kind of jobs they're going to have when they come out. But I also worry about your sons and daughters. I worry about your grandchildren, about what opportunities are going to be there. Because I know when I grew up, my mom and dad graduated from high school. And we had more opportunities than they did. And now I'm worried that we're leaving this generation coming up behind us with less opportunities. And I truly believe that we can turn that around. And it is about jobs, folks. At the end of the day, it's about how government doesn't create jobs. Entrepreneurs, small businesses create jobs in America, and that's what we need to get back to. Thank you so very much, and I appreciate if you'd vote for me.
David, thank you. Good job, Congressman.